Alayna, welcome to the Big Skip Energy Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You doing all right?
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely been a busy year, but really excited to sit down and chat a little bit and catch up.
Excellent, excellent. So, guys, Alayna and I had the pleasure to meet. Well, at least the pleasure was mine anyway. At the Mark conference last year. It's already been a year,
hmm
hasn't it? Wow, it's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, I know. So she she was actually across the exhibitor space for me. So we were neighbors, across the street neighbors, and
Yep.
got to know each other over the course of a few days. And Elaine, I got to be honest with you. You bring a great energy and a great enthusiasm and some really excellent qualities to not only the mortgage industry but any space that you've been involved in. I've been following you on LinkedIn. It's good stuff there. So listen, I really appreciate you coming on. So for those of you that don't know Alayna, go ahead, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. My name is Alayna Gardner. I work for Lodestar Software Solutions. We do closing costs in the space for mortgage lenders specifically. So everything in section C and E on your LE, we are the fee experts, as it were. I've been in the mortgage industry for just over 2 years, but prior to that, I was in the hospitality industry for 13 years, ending my career at the Ritz-Carlton Philadelphia in the restaurant. I've been really happy to be in the mortgage industry. I recently got the HousingWire Rising Star Award, and honestly, I just could not be more honored to be in the space.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to bring that up later. No, that's
You
great. That's
know,
great. That is a tremendous honor because, okay, now listen, I hate to be like, the old guy here, but, obviously you're younger. That's great. That's
Mhm.
a very, very refreshing thing, though, to see a younger professional taking hold in this industry because I'm 40, I'm about to be 42 and I'm considered young by mortgage
Yes,
standards. That's a problem. That's a problem.
yes.
So, it is good to have a fresh take on things for sure. So, okay, I've got to ask so the hospitality industry, drawing on that, I'm sure has helped you innumerably in your current
Mhm.
venture at Lodestar. But what do you think the most, or I guess the strongest piece that you could take from your previous industry to this one? What have you been able to draw on the most there?
I think so much of it is honestly based in I've had a lot of leadership roles.
Yeah,
I was a manager at 16, which is crazy to think about. I go back to that at a McDonald's, but still, right? Like I count that.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And really learning the structure and organization that hospitality requires to just function, right? Their margins are so small. The mortgage industry has huge margins, even with the IMB numbers reporting what they are, with the cost to produce a loan and all of that. But in most markets, restaurants are running a 5% margin, a 10% margin if they're lucky. I remember one year we had a 12% margin and our ownership was over the moon, right?
Yeah,
And that's just something that, it comes with a meticulous kind of awareness of all of your costs, your labor needs. Turnover is so expensive. So you really have to focus on building those meaningful connections in a really small budget. And it's allowed me to, now that I have a little bit more wiggle room, we have a little bit more margins, we're in tech, right? To create some
yeah,
really unique experiences for our lenders as well as my employees and my team.
yeah. So one thing that I think you hit spot on there. I would contend that the margins these days, depending on who you are in the industry, may be a little compressed. But at the same time, we have to churn as many. We are a very high volume needed industry. Like
Mhm,
got to keep it coming in, right? And so similarly to the hospitality industry, you got to keep those rooms booked. Got to keep people interested, wanting to do
mhm.
this. And so a lot of the same qualities, I'm sure, translate over well. So, what was it that made you come over to our to our business?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's absolutely crazy. 2020 happened, turns out selling private events during a pandemic, uh,
Oh
not a
yeah, no
not the
problem.
greatest move. And I had gone back, actually in July of 2020. I went back to the restaurant for about 4 6 months. And it just, my job completely transformed. And I'm sure that a lot of people in the industry right now can really relate to that, right?
Yep.
The position as it was not there. And it was no fault of the company, right? Like it was just, it is what it is, right? And because of that, I kind of got to my breaking point. I was like, I hate my job. This is not what I want to do. This is not the same
Yeah.
job I had 6 months ago, 9 months ago. And I just started applying for anything and everything, to be honest. I knew that in 6 months, if I wanted to, I could probably get a job as a private events manager, um, and go back. So I took a cold calling job at Lodestar,
Look
actually.
at you. I love it. The cold
So
call is
I
not dead.
Cold calling is not dead. I absolutely personally hate cold calling. I don't think it's the right thing for our business, but that's okay. There is a place for it, and I think it's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I decided to not hold any punches. So I was very open with our CEO, Jim Paolino, about things that I thought could be done differently. The person I was reporting to, I didn't think was doing a great job. So I was very open and honest with him about that. Every time I had the opportunity, raised my hand as much as possible. And by December of 2022 or 2020, I had the Lodestar product line as the head salesperson. So thankfully, Jim kind of took my feedback in stride, realized that if he gave me access to things, I would make it happen. And, here we are now 2 years later, and I get to be the director of sales and marketing for a wonderful company.
Look at you. So, all right. You work in tech sales to an
Hmm.
industry that is not struggling is not the right word, but we're having a little bit of a downtime right now. So,
Yes.
talk to me about the strategies that you see in the B2B space that have enabled you to continue to be successful despite who you sell to having to pull back a little bit.
Yeah, I think for us, we just happen to be at a really good growth spot, right? Is a huge part of it. Some of it is luck, and I can't say that. Not necessarily luck, but timing. So
Yeah.
we're in a growth period. Um, our competitors are doing what our competitors are doing. And we've really been able to take advantage of that. We've really seen a huge growth in investment in tech with banks and credit unions right now because they have time, right? And they have the money because they're not just doing mortgage. So they're using this time to invest back into their mortgage divisions. And I think we're going to see a really big growth from those two portions of the market when volume comes back because they are investing in tech.
Yeah.
Whereas IMBs are a little bit more restricted in just the money they have to spend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So, but I guess my question is more along the lines of, okay, I mean, your product, there are similar ones out there. You're not
100%.
commoditized yet, but
No,
y'all have still continued some success. So I appreciate the modesty in saying that it's luck, but at the same time, there have got to be
100%. There's work
some.
that goes into it.
Well, yeah. Well, so that's what I'm looking for. Let's
Yeah,
give me a couple.
let's dive into it.
Yeah, like give me a couple of the keys that you say. Hey, look, if you were to talk
Mhm.
to somebody who's entering into your job right now, let's just say, okay,
Yeah.
tell me the two or three biggest things that I need to be sure that I focus on when trying to sell to who you sell to.
The biggest thing for me, and the biggest thing I think we've seen growth out of, is focusing on the people who are in the power to refer you.
Okay.
Um, it's Lenders want to work with people they trust. And at the end of the day, if they've never met me before, they don't know they can trust me. And I think that's totally fair. But a lot of those lenders have either other lenders that they know that you can get a referral from, other vendors that are in a completely different space you can get a referral from. And that's been one of the biggest growth pieces I think we've seen in our business is we've been collaborating more and more with other vendors in the space that are like-minded, that are privately held, that are really invested into the future of the mortgage industry and not just to make money for money's sake, right? We
Hmm.
all care about our products deeply. And that's been a really big growth piece for us. One moment that sticks out in my mind is we were at the ICE Experience conference in
Yeah.
February. A group of my like-minded sales colleagues were all at a bar late at night because that's what happens at these shows,
Yeah.
especially in Vegas. Um, but there was this beautiful moment where we all introduced each other to a different lender and we kind of traded hands at the bar. And by no means was it super profitable or was it super amazing, right? Like no one closed a deal that night. But we all made a connection and made a human connection, which is really how you progress those deals in the mortgage space, especially for something like what we do that requires so much trust.
Yeah.
So that's been really great is referrals hand in hand. If you can get one, if you can build that network. And a lot of it is having a great product and really building that out.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you right, then referrals come from relationships, conversations. That is really the big key there, is to have meaningful, open conversations with your prospects and industry peers. Is that a fair statement?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't view people as, at the end of the day, if someone's going to go with my competitor, they were never going to choose me anyways. Right.
Mm,
So there's a lot less competition, I think, in the market. If you can feel secure in what you're offering and secure in your pricing and all of that, you're really in a position of power where if I'm the right fit for a lender, I'm going to be the right fit. So let me try and talk to as many people, have as many open conversations as can, and realize you're not the right fit for everyone. And that's okay.
hmm So, in in an industry like tech, for example,
Mhm.
that y'all price is obviously important, but it's difficult sometimes for your customers to comprehend what drives the price that you are necessarily offering, because you and I both know as sales professionals that price is important, but it's not always the be all end all. And so,
Mhm.
what are some best practices that you can say, hey, look, these are the types of questions that you need to ask to, or things that you need to do to be sure that your customers understand the value that they're getting for price XYZ. It doesn't matter if you're the best or the worst price. It doesn't matter. Just understanding what all is driven it, because tech, kind of like a mortgage can be to a consumer, tech can be to other industries that don't deal with it every day, a little bit intimidating. So it goes back to the trust you
Mhm.
said, right? But it can also be a little ambiguous. So how do you navigate and kind of get through that those waters there?
Yeah. So myself and my team try to be as transparent as possible with pricing with lenders. So, and even if a vendor asks me how much does your service cost, I will tell them.
Yeah, sure. You should
And
never dodge the question.
never dodge the question. I think sometimes, especially in the mortgage space, because there's so many add-ons, there's so many this, that, there's a little bit of
Right.
fear among quoting a price up front
Exactly. Exactly.
because it can bite you in the butt, right? I don't know if
hmm
I can swear on this. So
No, this is yeah. You can say whatever the hell you want to say on here.
perfect. But there's that mentality of you have to cover your ass, right? So you're a little hesitant, especially new salespeople are terrified to
Yep.
quote a price because you're told not to, right?
Well,
Over
yeah.
and over again. But once you're put into a position a little higher up, you can be a little bit more flexible with it, have those conversations, and you understand a little bit more of the nuances. Um, but one thing that we do is we have really transparent pricing sheets and pricing models. And when people ask us for a discount, to be quite honest, we normally don't do it. Because at the end of the day, we've offered our solution for the fairest price possible, right?
Yeah.
It's competitive, it's this, it's that. Um, and of course, everyone knows negotiating is a thing. And there are people that
Sure.
want to negotiate for negotiating's sake. So it's more
Yeah.
about making your clients making them comfortable in the negotiation, right? What are they looking to get out of that? And I think that's something that as when you start negotiating early on in your sales career, you don't really quite you kind of think it needs to be about price, right? Think it
Well, that's
needs
the
to be I need
that's
to
what everybody
negotiate
goes
this.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes it's more about do they need the do they just need a little extra feature? Do they
hmm
need co- do they need the confidence that we're going to do this customization for us for
Yep.
them, right?
Or do they
Do they need
understand
a
what they're getting for that price? That a lot of times
exactly.
is where I think. people fall short is you could say that I've got the highest priced widget on the market, but if they don't understand what all goes behind that, then yeah, then they're left to make their own conclusions. So that's why I was back to the question, kind of getting them to understand that, right?
And one of the biggest things that we've done this year with our marketing specifically that I'd seen be a really big value is we try to incorporate numbers wherever we can.
Yes.
So for example, we say we have good customer service. Well, what does that mean? Right? Everyone says
Yeah.
they have good customer service. For us, it means we have a resolved ticket time of 4.5 days. That matters, right? Um, the fact that we had one issue for every 22,000 quotes last year, that matters, right? That is what they are getting for the cost.
Yep.
And if you're in a position and you don't know the numbers of behind what you're selling and the value it's truly providing to your customer, then you're in a weaker position than someone who has those analytics. So you really have to push for those. And trust me, it took me almost 2 years to get them to promote to actually externalize a ticket time. It was always good. They just weren't. It's a fear, right? Of, well, then people are going
Yeah.
to expect that from us.
Yep. So I mean, I would say so. Let's just put it into mortgage terms for LOs and underwriting. Underwriting
Mhm.
turn times. You publish them out there. Well, they are where they are for one thing. But if they're
Exactly.
really, really good, that's great. If they're not so great, hey, guess what? If you've got a good, dedicated account exec, you're going to understand why that is. And so I
Yep.
think that also goes into it. You gotta be able to explain to them. Because again, if you start talking to me, I mean, I know obviously what your product is, what you do, but if you start trying to explain why your ticket time is this, that, and the other, if I don't have a good comprehension of what you're saying, then it's just kind of out there. So
Exactly.
yeah,
It
no,
means
I
something
think
to the
it's
people that are buying us, but it doesn't mean something to someone who has no idea why they would use us.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, um, as far as selling in a market where because y'all now correct me if I'm wrong, y'all
Mhm.
specialize in just one service that you offer, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So you are competing against other companies that also offer one service similar to yours, but there's also several out there. Correct me if I'm wrong again, please, because I'm not
Mhm.
in your industry directly. But you also sell against companies that have they're the tech giants. They have all the different like solutions for the problems and that kind of thing. So do you run into the issue a lot where a prospect or a customer says, "Well, I work with XYZ. They've got something similar to that. I'm just going to go with them because it's easier." Uh, does that happen to you?
It used to.
Okay.
It was actually a really big issue for us when I first started with the company was the replacement sale was almost impossible.
Yeah.
Um, we actually now only directly compete with two product lines that are both owned by major conglomerates.
Yeah.
We'll just I won't name them.
No, we don't
Um,
have to name names. I know exactly who they are because I
we
know I
don't
work with
name
them.
names.
So
If you do your market research, you know who I'm talking about.
yeah.
Um, and if not, you might know anyways. Um, but one of our major competitors got acquired by one of the large conglomerates last year. And with that, we kind of saw something very similar to what we had seen when our first competitor got acquired by a large conglomerate is customer service gets a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Um, they normally do a reduction of workforce, right? Because that's part of the appeal, right, to them is they have a product line, but they have resources. They don't necessarily need a full company. So we went from being this or the second largest fee provider to we have the largest dedicated team to fees in the mortgage space, right? Oh,
Very
and that's
cool.
14 people.
Yeah.
But when a major conglomerate absorbs a company, sometimes, they let people go. It happens.
Yep.
So that's been honestly, that's why I say so much of it and so much of our growth is kind of timing, right? Right place, right time. But also, we did a lot of positioning to put ourselves in the position to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Very cool. So let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about some sales leadership. How about that?
Yeah, love
All
that.
right. So tell me if you had to pick. So right now, depending on what source you look at and how you define it, we may or may not be in a recession. There's one looming,
Eh,
right? So if you
one
are
or the
leading a
other.
sales team, yeah, if you're leading a sales team in which every dollar is going to be scrutinized, you know, it's going to be a tougher economy, that kind of thing. What do your marching orders consist of to your sales teams right now?
One, I think whenever there's a potential for people's jobs to be on the line, I think as leaders, we need to be as transparent as possible. Um, you know, especially in sales, we all know sales is very often the first department to be cut. Marketing is the first department to be cut. Um, and I think as a leader, if you can be open and honest with people as much as possible, of course, you don't want to cause any panic or anything like that. And you might not know yourself. But if you don't talk about it, it's going to get worse and it's going to spread like a plague amongst your salespeople.
Yeah,
Um, just a fact. Because people get nervous for their jobs and it is what it is. Um, but beyond that, I think one of the biggest things that you can do is have weekly one on ones with each of your salespeople. Talk about their numbers, talk about their personal growth, see
yeah, it's a
what's
big best
happening.
practice. Yeah,
It's a huge best practice. And really make sure the meetings that you're having are meaningful. I think a lot of times in sales, when we're under the gun, we have
as opposed
really
to this
long
meeting could be an
meetings.
email.
This meeting could be an email. And I think as leaders, it's our job to make sure we have a very pointed agenda, to walk into those meetings, know what we're going to talk about, know what we're trying to achieve, and give our salespeople the time to go sell, right? We don't need to be sitting there having everyone walk through their pipeline, telling me where every lead is at. We need to be asking what their roadblocks are, how we can remove them as leaders, and how can we help them get their deals over the finish line.
Mhm.
Um, Really, once you're in the role of a sales leader, your job is sales enablement, right?
Yeah,
Is how can I help my team close deals? And I
yeah,
think that's so important. Is we need to be really mindful of their time. Um, they're going to be nervous. The people that are there are either going to completely check out or they're going to work the hardest they ever have in their life,
yeah,
right? Because they don't want to lose their job.
yep,
So your uh your low performers will weed themselves out.
yeah. They're better.
They better. If not, you have to weed them out for you.
Yeah,
If not,
yeah,
you have
for
some work to
sure.
do. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
It's
So
fine.
yeah. All right. So let's drill this down again. Let's come back to you. Just Alayna as the person here. What is it about sales
Okay.
that you like?
Oh god. That's a huge question.
It is
Um,
very broad, open ended. So let's see what you got here.
I think my favorite thing about sales is the same thing that I love about leadership as well as marketing is I absolutely love talking to people and being able to help people.
Yeah,
I would never sell a product that I didn't feel that I could get behind and provide value to people. And I think a lot of times I remember in one of my business ethics textbooks, it's sales and marketing is unethical, right? Because you
yeah,
always want something for yourself, right? Um, but for me, it was more about, we have a product that helps people, or it was, I can help you throw your wedding. Like, I can throw you a beautiful event. Or, I remember the first moment I really latched onto sales was helping people pick out what they wanted to order at McDonald's. It was so silly, but I,
yeah,
I look back at that moment of realizing like this was a moment that I decided I wanted to do this, right? I enjoyed sales.
yeah. It's interesting because okay, so you're kind of like me. You've been working really since you could legally work, right? I
A
mean,
hundred percent.
yeah. I mean, I started working at Target when I was 15. All right, so yeah,
14,
did
yeah.
this, and so yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, exactly. And so that's really interesting because some of the stuff that I learned doing this or doing that has translated so strongly. It kind of set the foundation to build on itself to where I am now and what I do now. So, would you
Mhm.
agree that's the same for you?
Oh, 100%. I purposefully leave my entire work history on my LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And I talk about McDonald's, to be quite honest, more than most people probably would. because I view it as a really valuable time. I had one of my most meaningful leadership experiences there. I
Yep.
learned a lot about how to manage a team. I made a lot of mistakes there. Um, and it really provided me with the insight that I would not be the person I am today without that job. And I would not be the
Yeah,
leader I am today without that job. And I think that's important to tell people is those jobs are stepping stones.
they
Um,
are.
and you're not going to get a better job at 14.
Well, I mean, okay. So listen, I'm a big believer in education,
Mhm.
but my degrees, they, from a practicality standpoint, they didn't teach me what I learned from actual work when I was a teenager. As far as some of the practical things that you can do day in and day out, big
Mhm.
concepts, that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. But I'm talking about putting pen to paper, learning. So for you, what's the number one thing you learned while working at McDonald's as a teenager that translates into your work today? The biggest, most impactful piece. What was it, or is it?
Oh gosh. I think the biggest thing I would have to say is the small investments that you can make in your team. Um,
Example.
like I would bake a cake or cupcakes to bring into my night shift team. Um, one of my honestly one of my proudest moments in my entire leadership career, and I don't know if anything will ever top this, which is kind of sad, but we'll see. um, is as I was leaving the store, I was moving to Pennsylvania, I was leaving, and they needed another closing manager. And recommended one of my crew trainers for it. I said, this guy's really got it. He can do it. And everyone in around the table was like, I don't know if he's responsible enough. I don't think he can do it. And I was like, no, I was like, trust me. I was like, this guy's got it. Um, and they ended up giving him the position. And 2 years later, I was back in town visiting my parents, and he sat down. We went out to go get a drink. And he told me that it was the first time he had really felt like someone believed in him in his life and
I
that someone
like
put
it.
him up for something. And he ended up leaving that store. He ended up being a manager at Home Depot. And now he's a high level manager of a construction company and all of that. So it really put him, you never know what someone else is going through and what someone
Yes.
else has had lacking in their life.
Yep.
And as leaders, sometimes we can give people the confidence to chase something they didn't even know was possible. And that's kind of the lesson that I really learned. And it's part of the reason, honestly, a lot of my team didn't come from mortgage. I'm very commonly by other vendors asked about that.
Yeah.
One of my salespeople was a music teacher. Um, but really, to me, it's more about seeing the potential in people and being able to nurture it and grow that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned at
I was going to
McDonald's
say the
is
technical
realize
stuff. You can learn that, right? But people's
exactly.
core is not something that you can train on or do a workshop on or anything like that. You can't change who somebody is.
Exactly.
Well, for the most part. So to take what you said though and make it more elemental. I mean, it just sounds like to me the biggest takeaway was showing your team members that you give a shit about them.
100%.
So let's just be honest. Showing them that they matter, and that is one way to
Mhm.
build. You build loyalty, trust, and have a more effective team. That's a great way to start. I love that. It's great.
100%. Yeah, it's the biggest thing you can do more than anything else, right? Is if you
Yeah,
have a team that is motivated to work for you, you can make anything happen.
yeah. So okay, I know I touched on this earlier. You're younger than most folks in our industry. That presents its own unique challenges. Um,
Yes.
if you probably haven't listened to the show very much, but I do a series for or about women in mortgage and real estate
Mhm.
related. I did one last year, did one this year. So you're younger, you're a woman. That presents
Mhm.
challenges in a male dominated industry of older folks.
Mhm.
What are the, you're like, yeah, tell me about it. What are some of the most effective means by which you have navigated those waters?
Mhm.
And what would you recommend to other young women who are looking to get into this, maybe not this business, but a similar style or situation to help them succeed and grow?
I think one of the biggest things, that I realized very early on at Lodestar is being more direct. I
Yep.
think as women, we're kind of trained, um, to kinda be a little bit more subdued, less
Mhm.
pointed, um, and that really translates into our working careers. And I've always been pretty straightforward. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm not a liar. Like I've never been good at like the little white lies that like you're like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." No, I'm not. I'll just stay silent. Um,
Yep.
but I think for me, really recognizing that my opinions matter and I have good opinions, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of young women, when compared to their male counterparts, don't do, right? Um, Young men are willing to say their minds, they're gonna push forward, and it's the reason that a lot of times they are put forth for a promotion first, or they're put
Yeah.
forth further up, for better or for worse, right? Sometimes they say things they shouldn't, but
I'm just
at the
thinking
end of
back
the
to things that
day
I said when I was like 23, 24. I'm like, God, what a dickhead.
exactly, but if you don't say those things, you don't learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't
Exactly.
learn why that concept wouldn't work or, you know,
Excuse me.
any of that. So I think for me, that's been the biggest piece over the last 2 to 3 years is I used to stay silent on a lot of things. I didn't fight for what I thought my team needed or what I needed or anything like that. And it was kind of growing before that, I was doing some of it, but for whatever reason, when I got the job at Lodestar, I just said, "You know what? I'm just gonna let it all go. I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
whatever I want. If they fire me, they fire me, right?" Um, and that's, I think, one of the most powerful things I ever did for myself is realizing that it's just a job. I can get
Yeah.
another one.
For
Like,
sure.
and
Yeah.
I'm never gonna grow if I don't challenge.
So if you've got somebody in front of you who's like, okay, so you say, okay, I need to grow my assertive confidence, which is what you're
Mhm.
describing there. You know, I don't know if it just came to you naturally or if there was a tipping point for you or if you had to work on it. But regardless, if you had somebody that's, that was in front of you that you knew that that was something that they had to improve, what would you do for them? Or, for them or recommend that they try and, work on to change it.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I do to kind of put myself in the right headspace, right? Because I think that's
Yeah.
also
Oh,
part
it's
of
all
it is
mindset.
you
Yeah.
it's mindset. One, music is a huge thing for me. If I'm ever speaking anywhere, I've gotten an opportunity to speak at a couple panels and stuff over the last year.
Your husband's a
Um,
musician, right?
yes,
Ah, I remembered.
he
Okay,
is,
sorry,
yes.
go ahead.
But so I will you will not find me on the floor for the, like, 20, 30 minutes before I speak. I will be in my hotel room listening to something that really motivates me, whatever music that is. It changes for me on a daily basis. Um, and doing it sounds really silly, but a power pose is just really getting big and taking up space.
Yeah.
And especially for women, I think that can be so important because we're
Yep.
taught our entire lives to not take up space, to make
Yeah.
ourselves smaller. And I've really leaning into that helped me. And the other thing is if there's something major you want to talk about with, for example, your boss or a colleague that you want to bring up, you can either talk to yourself in a mirror. I like to take my dog on walks and talk to myself. I probably look like a crazy person. I don't care.
Nah.
Um, you can talk to a coworker and kind of talk through it as well,
Mhm.
to make sure your idea is solid to give
Yeah.
you that confidence, right? So those are the things that especially early on as I was trying to build my confidence, I really leaned into is
Okay.
figuring out mentors are great as well. I'm a huge fan of mentorship. The MBA, I think, just recently reopened it, or if not, if the next time they open it, I think everyone should apply. The MBA has an engaged mentoring program.
Yep.
Last year, I had I think 6 mentees, and I had 4 mentors, and it was one of the most fulfilling things I did.
Good. Yeah, for sure.
So,
So, yeah, I'm a big believer in role play, and sometimes the
mhm.
best is when you're by yourself, because especially
Yeah,
for speaking, right? Because it's not like you can practice a sales conversation. It's just you got to
you
essentially
just got to go.
practice until you can't get it wrong.
Mhm.
All right, so Elena, we're nearing the end here. What
Yes.
is what is something else that you would like my listeners to know about you?
Oh God, that's
Give me a fun random fact about Alayna.
oh, a fun random. I can do a random fact. It's
Yeah,
completely.
let's do that.
Um, so I've had the opportunity through my career to meet a good number of celebrities.
Oh, okay.
Um, and one of my this is my fun fact. If anyone asks me for like a fun fact, the corporate icebreaker, whatever, and it's a good one. Um, is I once got to drive Heidi Klum to QVC and bring her to Starbucks and all that stuff. And while we're waiting for Starbucks, she told me I could be a model. And I think that that is the best compliment I will ever get in my life. I'm sorry to my husband. He can't top that. So yeah, that's my fun fact is I gave up a career in modeling to, work in the
That's
mortgage
you
industry.
did. Yeah, Heidi Klum never said that to me. I don't know why. It's weird, huh?
You know, it was a very, very nice thing of her to say. to
I love it. I
I think
love
I
it.
was 19 at the time. It was great.
Well, see, there you go. So, all right, but now you've been in hospitality, Ritz Carlton, like you said, you've had some. Give
Mhm.
me. You don't have to name. Give me a celebrity horror story.
Oh god.
Like who was like, give me the. This person was such a such an
There
asshole
was
or so ridiculous or just whatever.
honestly, the one that I met that I was a little underwhelmed by, I won't name names, but they were a Food Network star.
Okay.
Um, I grew up on the Food Network, absolutely loved it. I loved this person's show. Um, and I met them. They could have been having an off day. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, especially in those situations.
Yeah.
They were just so rude. And it wasn't
Really?
anything in like super particular, but they wouldn't look anyone in the eye as they checked in and like it was just like they used their real name too. So it wasn't like one of those things where it was like a pseudonym and they weren't trying to have people recognize them. Like we knew who
Yeah.
it was. And I think that was one of the ones, and it was pretty early on that I met this person in my career.
Hmm.
So I was like, huh, that's a bummer. But honestly, most of the celebrities that I've met have actually been wonderful people. They've been
Well,
really
that's good. That's
giving.
refreshing. Because I
Um,
feel like my other friends in the in your former industry have got some
I mean, don't get me
overall
wrong,
very
there
good story or very good experiences, but they also seem to have that one that sticks out. So that's good though.
yeah, there are some that I've heard really terrible things about, but luckily I haven't had to experience too many of them.
All right. So, Alayna, if my listeners want to learn more about you, where should they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Alayna Gardner. I post about once a week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes not at all. And then you can also find me on the Lodestar Lending Leaders podcast. We're currently on our summer break, but we will be coming back with our summer session, and then our season 4 will kick off the first Thursday after Labor Day. And I'm really excited about it. We're going to do some fun things this year. We might bring back, we did ghost peppers for our season finale.
Nice.
Um, there is video of me talking about the state of the mortgage industry, crying from the heat of a ghost pepper. So that is kind of
Symbolic.
what you'll get. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
Very,
kind of not the normal at Lodestar, but we really love producing the podcast. It's been a great treat for us.
very cool. So, all right. Well, Alayna, I appreciate you taking some time to talk today. We'll have to have you on
Thank you
again
so much
soon,
for
and I'm
having
sure I
me.
will see you on the convention circuit.
Oh, for sure.
Thanks for coming on.